You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 109, part 1, but actually for real part 1 this time. Cue the music. This podcast is dedicated to Circus. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey friends, fans, and foes, I'm Shannon McKenna. I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast and the founder of theartistathlete.com. Now, listen up, guys. This is going to be a little bit of an explanation introduction today because something weird happened last week. So, last week, we had Francisco Cruz on the podcast. Also this week, Francisco Cruz's interview is happening on the podcast. Last week was supposed to be part 1, and then we would play this week part 2. So, my files were already uploaded. Everything is sitting on the platform that we do all of our recordings on. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background on what behind the scenes artist-athlete situation. So everything's uploaded to the platform, and I messaged my editor, Allison, and I was like, hey, take down part 1, edit it, and we'll get it out for next week's episode. She was like, great. Everything went through. She sent me the edited version to kind of finalize. And in that edited version, I only listened to the intro outro because Allison does such a good job with the bulk and the meat of the podcast. And it's been a pretty crazy week for me. I've had a lot of things going on personally. I just launched my second round of the Act Creation Intensive, which is this really awesome program through the Artist Athlete, which helps people create acts over the course of 8 weeks. So I was doing all of that and didn't really have time to do my due diligence and check over the episode. So, Monday morning rolls around. And by the way, people are posting that they loved last week's episode. And it had I think it had 1,000 downloads after 24 hours of being up, which is crazy. It's really cool to see that. Those aren't big numbers for a podcast, but they're pretty big numbers for a circus podcast. So, anyway, there's all these eyes on it. There's all this stuff. And then I get this DM from one of my friends, fans, or foes, Sam. Shout out to Sam. And Sam DMs me on Instagram and he's like, hey, just so you know, I don't think this is part 1 of this interview. It kind of comes in kind of abruptly. You're talking about Traces, this show. I don't know what's going on. It's not the regular format. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. So I went on Spotify, I download the episode and I listen, and sure enough, it is part 2 playing. Well, I was panicked. I was stressed. I was like, shit, what do I do? I messaged Allison. She was stressed. She was panicked. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And you know what? I just kind of had to chalk it up to the fact that the Artist Athlete has done 109 episodes. Some of those episodes have been incredibly ambitious projects. And this is the first time that we've really had kind of a snafu like this, where we played part 2 instead of part 1. And guess what? Everybody lived. I'm still okay. I'm telling the tale. You're still listening. So presumably I haven't completely lost your trust or shut you down or turned you off to the Artist Athlete podcast and all the cool stories that are on it. So this is, it's going to be okay. Even if you don't do things perfectly sometimes, it's going to be okay, was the lesson that I am trying to learn from all this. Of course, upon reflection, I can't help but think that if I had a little more time and energy, if we had a little bit of a bigger team, if we had more eyes on each episode, if we had a bigger production budget, it might be a little easier to have caught this really big mistake. But I don't know. And I don't want to sound like I'm blaming anyone else. I'm the founder of The Artist Athlete. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm the producer. I'm the one who ultimately signed off on it. And Allison, as the editor, was just going along with what I was saying. So, it's about kind of me being stretched too thin. As I've said before, I don't really make any money off of this podcast. I just keep going because Patreon covers all the expenses. But I'm starting to think that I'm going to have to shift this model. After 109 episodes, I don't know what's going to be working for me anymore. I'm going to keep doing this, but there may be some changes in place because I don't want to mess up like that again. So, apologies to you, the listener, for any confusion. Apologies to Francisco, who was so awesome and so supportive and so cool and listened to the episode before I knew there was a problem and was writing me to say how great it was. So thank you for being so positive, Francisco Cruz. I hope you like the actual beginning of your episode as much as you loved the beginning that you thought was the beginning of your episode. I hope that'll make sense. Because this has been kind of long-winded, I think you guys can go back to the fake part 1, which is actually part 2, and listen to Francisco's bio. Again, I think Francisco is a really awesome guest. He's really well-spoken. He's really thoughtful and has really reflected on a very long circus career. I know a lot of times y'all want me to have people on who have started circus at the age of, 36 or 22. I started circus at 22. Francisco started when he was 7. And that can be, or feel on the surface, hard to relate to. But as I said last week, I really think that if you listen, you'll hear so many connections and thoughts and ideas that Francisco had and made during his time in circus that are really universal and can happen to you at any point in your career, no matter how long you've been doing it. Obviously, the opportunities he got, the way that he was just kind of in to develop a show with the 7 fingers, probably wouldn't happen unless you had a lot of skill and a lot of things to show. But I think what's relatable is even with all those opportunities, even with all that success, Francisco still asks those questions. What is my role in circus? How do I fit in? And those are questions that an artist who starts their career at any age has to ask. You are not exempt because you started at a younger age. You are not exempt from those feelings of anxiety or self-doubt or questioning or having to make decisions about the course of your life. Sorry, it's just the truth. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much longer. I want to get to the interview. This is a long interview anyway, but I think every moment is precious, and I hope you enjoy listening to this interview as much as I loved recording it and being a part of it. So, here's the real part 1 of my interview with Francisco Cruz. So I always start by saying, Francisco Cruz, welcome to the Artist Athlete Podcast.
Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my God, it's so good to have you. Like I said, widely requested. Everyone wants their story.
Appreciate that.
Or knows your story and wants you to tell it again, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
So start with the basics. Who are you? What do you do?
All right. So my name is Francisco Cruz. I'm originally from San Francisco. Right now, what I do, I was a performer for over 20 years, but right now I'm an associate artistic director at the 7 Fingers, which actually encompasses a few different tasks. I do a lot of videography there, coaching, working on different projects, casting, and various other hats.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So let's go. Okay. So you're one of those San Francisco kids, I feel
Yes.
The iconic Louis Yee trained San Francisco
Louis
kid.
Yee all the way. Yep.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about growing up under the tutelage of this famous Chinese dude who I've always wanted to interview, but he's just, it's not going to happen in his lifetime. So yeah, he's very elusive.
Yeah, no, I was lucky enough that, I'll start off by just letting you know that me, my brother, we were homeschooled for our whole lives. And we actually grew up, we lived about 30, 40 minutes outside of San Francisco, but my mom is a musician. Okay. And so when we were kids, my mom knew she wanted to homeschool us, and both my parents were super down for that. And so at one point, my mom was because she's a musician, she's like, okay, they're going to learn music. And she's a huge believer in sort of talent development on top of, you do the math, you do the language arts, but, what are the talents that you're pursuing as well? So music was, we had no choice in that.
What instrument?
Piano.
Yeah.
My mom's a violinist, also plays piano, but she's a violinist. And then she had, me and my brothers both, all of us did piano, which I tried to quit so many times. so many times. Well, fast forward quickly, 18 years old, all of a sudden, I'm with friends and I'm playing piano and they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. You play piano." And I'm like, "Yeah, that is really cool that I play piano." Super
Right?
proud of it. So my mom is a musician and she randomly knew a musician or was friends with a musician who was working for the Pickle Family Circus
Okay.
in San Francisco. And then he sort of mentioned to her that there was a Chinese trainer, Mr. Lee, looking for students. And my mom, already sort of doing the homeschool thing and very sort of hippie-ish education. She's like, "Oh, that sounds different and interesting and fun." So she drove. And at this point, I think I'd done like a year of gymnastics or a year and a half of gymnastics. Anyway, so we drive to San Francisco. And I don't know if you've heard from other stories, but, the original Pickle Family Circus school, I guess, where I started was in an old church. And so, we show up and I'm a kid. I think I'm like 7. I think it was like 7.5. Anyways, so we walk in and there's Mr. Lee and he barely speaks any English. And my mom's there super hyped. Like, "Okay, like we want to sign up for your class." And no, we don't get to sign up. First, he has to accept you. So he had me stand there and my mom's going off like, "Oh, he can do a back handspring. He can do this. He can do that." Nope. Had me stand there. He checked my elbows, my knees, looked like had me stand profile. And he goes, "Okay, you'll never do handstands. That's for sure." And I'm 7. I'm like, what,
Bro.
what do you mean I'm not going to do handstands? And he's like, "No, look at your elbow. It doesn't straighten all the way. Like you're not going to do handstands." Looked at my knee. He goes, "Okay, I'll accept you." And I was like, "Cool. All right, let's do this." And my mom was excited about it. And so I just started I started training with Louis. It was really after a school thing. So it was 3 times a week from 4 to 6 o'clock. And then I really got to commend my parents because they made that, I say 30 to 40 minutes. That's without traffic. But with traffic, we're
Getting
talking an
across the
hour,
bridge.
sometimes hour and a half. It's a nightmare. Sure. But they were so consistent in bringing me and my brother there, 3 times a week for X amount of years until, Mr. Lee really gave us so much to just like love about the technique and athleticism of circus that 3 days a week turned into 5 days a week, turned into 6 days a week, turned into just falling in love with it, with the flips and the flying high in the air and the pole climbing and the teeter board, et cetera, et cetera. But
was it like, okay, so I'm interested because you were like, I tried to quit piano for so long. And then you're talking about like tumbling and, and acrobatics. And you're like, it was just great. Do you think it was like the teaching? Do you think it's just like innate about like the physical activity? Is it something in you? Like, what do you think? Because both require like a certain amount of discipline,
Yeah. And I think, at one point I did try to quit circus as well. Because there became a height issue and I was really scared. But
like
I think
you were
in the beginning,
too tall?
No, that I was doing some tricks on pole, where I was actually going up about, I would say 18 feet and I would loop my foot in a foot loop attached to the pole and I would hold 3 people or 4 other people and they'd attach themselves and I was the base in the loop. And one day training, like my foot just slipped out and we all fell. And then I was just like, I'm done. Like, nope, like not coming back. And my mom pretty much, she drove me and my dad, they drove me to the gym and I sat outside and I think they drove me 3 times a week for like 2 months and I refused to go in.
You just sat outside.
I just sat outside. I was like, no, I'm done with this. Like over. Like I was just too scared. Like the fear all of a sudden took over and I was like, it's not worth it. It's not worth the risk. No.
And what got you back inside? Like one day you were like, all right, it's kind of cold
just
out,
to answer your question about why circus, I think, especially as a young kid, you got all this energy, you're running around and there's something about circus that sort of has that superhero quality to it of learning how to manipulate your body and have body awareness and control. And, like I'm going to learn how to do backflips. I'm going to learn how to scale a pole. I'm going to learn how to get launched off of a teeter board with somebody, 2 other people jumping on the other side. I'm going to learn how to manipulate my body and fly through hoops to do hoop diving. So I think it's that it's that aspect. I mean, and every kid, I think, also wants to have some ownership over what they do and to have ownership over these skills that not a lot of kids around me had. And that was something to make me feel special. And that was something to feel special. And that was something to be proud of. And I think as a kid, you gravitate towards things like that of like, I can be proud of this because I'm not looking at a lot of people do it. And when I do it, I'm getting praise. I'm getting, wow, that's so amazing what you're doing. Like, teach me that. And so, like I said, I think, between 7 and 13, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I feel like powerful, you know what I mean? As a little kid. And I think that's totally important. Whereas, if you look at the other hand, when I was talking about piano is much less superhero. Which is,
no one's like, wow, that's amazing. You can play do-re-mi or whatever.
So I think as a kid, you're just like, well, I'd rather dedicate all my time to flipping versus dedicate my time to sitting there playing piano keys. Anyways.
Yeah. So a lot of kids went through, the San Francisco Circus Center and Louis' training and all of that.
Yeah.
But only so many of them became professionals.
Yeah.
What was that road for you?
We had a core. Like, it was me, my brother Raph, my best friend Brad, other best friend Will, and the four of us really sort of became this like, okay, we're dedicating ourselves to this. Like, we just loved it so much. And it's funny because like a lot of people, they have that expression of running away with the circus. But for us, we felt like we never ran away to the circus. Like, we happened upon it and we just didn't want to stop. It wasn't something we sought out. It was just something that was handed to us, So we're really, lucky in that sense. Like, this is an amazing art form. It's so inclusive of all these different sort of aspects of theater, music, athleticism, like I said, random disciplines, celebrates uniqueness. Anyway, so we were like hyped on that. Like, okay, so we're just going to keep going until who knows when. And like I said, like, me and my brother specifically were really fortunate that we were homeschooled. So like I said, we were doing at one point, it went from 2 hours a day to 4 hours every single day that we were going. And then when I got older, we were able to take, the BART and the Metro by ourselves. And so we'd go even more just to train with Louis.
Where in the Bay did you live?
So
I lived in Oakland for a while. So
okay, so yeah, we lived in Vallejo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you took it.
Yeah.
Took you a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's it. That's
All
it.
right.
So we grew up in Vallejo, we lived in Vallejo. But like I said, since we were homeschooled, most of our time was spent in San Francisco, I would say, just because, like I said, as soon as we were given our freedom and learned how to take the BART and everything, we were going by ourselves pretty much every day. And so we were training a lot. And then me and Raph, we got the opportunity to go on tour with the New Pickle Circus at one point. And so that was sort of our first taste of being professional circus artists. And my mom actually hopped on that tour as well as a singer, just to sort of allow that to happen and to really, have the full experience and for us just to be on the road. And so we did that. I think it was like a 6-month tour. And that was, what's the name of that? My memory's going to be like all over the place. I haven't thought about this in so long. I think the name of it was Bang Bang, and it was by Tandy Beale. And so we toured with that, and that was like eye-opening of just like, I think I was 14 at the time, and Raph was 11, and we was just like on the road, hopping on. And it was kind of old school because we were like, in the buses, just traveling around, sharing hotel rooms and stuff. And it was just like, this is amazing. Like, we're traveling around this United States, performing this show, audiences are coming like, oh my God, that was amazing. And then we'd like pack up, go to the next city. And so that was just really like eye-opening in the terms of like, because there's not tons of professional circus artists in San Francisco, unfortunately. And so for us, just as kids, you're looking around, and not that we were like, had a goal set of like, we want to be professional circus artists. It was more just like, do you make a living doing circus, or do you just do it because you love it? It's sort of that thing of like circus as a passion. Well, yeah, circus as a passion versus circus for survival versus whatever. But going on this tour, we really saw like, okay, all these adults around us, we're all professional circus artists, and this is amazing. And so that was our first taste of it. But because we didn't see so many circus artists around us doing this full time, a lot of them had jobs on the side. We'll do circus as long as we can, but it was sort of assumed, like by me, my brother, and Brad and Will, that, okay, we're going to go to university. Like I was looking at, I think I was looking at UC Santa Cruz, and Will too. So thinking about university, but because of Gypsy's affiliation and Shayna's affiliation with the Pickles, they would drop in often throughout our childhood. And so we knew of them, they knew of us. I mean, I think Gypsy was like one of the first pictures I had on teeterboard. So,
wow.
yeah. So I think I remember at one point I had a conversation with her, and she's like, I remember standing up on that tower, looking at your face, so just like scared, and then, doing the signal, and I'm just jumping and launching you up. And, it was, so, there was a pretty deep history with her and with Shayna, just because of the Pickles, and there was that connection. So throughout the years, they kind of saw that. And so at one point, I'm hitting 17, 18, same with Will and Brad. And she asked us straight up, like, oh, what are you guys doing? I mean, at this point, I don't want to make a mistake with my dates or anything, but I'm pretty sure like Gypsy had already, had a career, and she'd been doing Cirque du Soleil, and Shayna too. And they understood, and they had been in Montreal. So they understood, like, they were making a living. They were making careers out of being circus artists. And so when they asked us, they said, okay, like, what are you guys going to do with your skills? Like, you've been doing this for X amount of time. Like, Louise really shaped you, given you all these different skills, and turned you into multidisciplinary artists. Where are you going next? And we told her, like, oh, we're going to university. And she said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You got it. You have to apply to the Circus University in Montreal. Not only will it sort of expand your, because at this point still, I have to sort of reiterate, like, I grew up doing skateboarding, basketball, circus, and for me, it was like about tricks. So the theatrical aspect, the speaking on stage, the contemporary part of circus really didn't exist for me. For me, it was very much about the athleticism and the coolness that that circus gave me. And so she started telling us, no, circus school in Montreal, it's going to expand circus for you. It's going to give you theater classes, clowning classes, all these different things, and just bring you to a whole nother level. And on top of that, Montreal is where it's at. If you're doing circus in North America, Montreal is such a hub for circus. Like, you need just to be there just for the community by itself, And so, I mean, I don't know if it took convincing. My parents were pretty much on board from the start. They're like, yeah, that sounds, again, the homeschooling and the sort of hippie vibes. Like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, let's go. Sure. Go ahead.
It's always the homeschool kid.
It's like, exactly. I know. So anyway, so she was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And then Will and Brad too. And there was also Alexis, who was part of our San Francisco crew, who's doing contortion. So she sort of, Gypsy convinced us all, and Shayna, and they sort of said, like, go to Montreal. That's where it's going to happen. So we found out the audition date, and we're like, okay, screw it. Like, we're just going to go for it. Why not? Like, what could happen? Like, okay, so we stop circus, and then we go to university like we originally planned, or we all get accepted. So we flew to Montreal. We're like, we're going to do it in person, check out Montreal. The parents wanted to see it too. So we flew here. That was like mind blowing, because all of a sudden we show up, we see the school. And for us, it was like, damn, this is like the Hogwarts of circus. Like, this is insane. Like, all these kids are here. Like, they're all so good. Like, this is crazy. And this school is like built for circus, whereas we had come from these gyms and these churches that were makeshift circus spaces. I can't tell you how many round off back handsprings I did on a carpet growing up. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden to walk into this circus school in Montreal, where it's like, they got spring floors, they got matted floors, they got dance tapis. Like, I was like, what? Like, this is nuts. This is crazy. And so, yeah, we just saw that. And then, we kind of got discouraged a little bit, because we had heard they only accept a certain number of foreigners.
Yeah.
So we weren't sure. And we're just like, hey, we're just going to go for it. Like, we're going to show up, do our thing, take it for what it is. But they accepted all of us at the same time. And so we're like, all right, we're moving to Montreal. We're going to do it. And then, that step alone sort of put us on that track to become professional circus artists. It's pretty known throughout the world that ENC has an amazing reputation for, producing professional circus artists. So that's the road. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask you kind of when you were talking about like your first time performing
Mm-hmm.
and going into like the theatricality and all of that, like how did you find your way as a performer and not just like a tricker?
Yeah, I mean,
Tr- It's like
tricker.
such a b-boy
I
term,
know,
right?
tricker. Oh, I think performing. I mean, like I said, I had the experience with the Pickle Family Circus or New Pickle Circus because they changed their name at one point. So being on stage, I think, like obviously being a part of that sort of San Francisco Circus Center, that that crew, and with Lu Yi, like we had our performances. We had done a lot of performances. I think my first ever performance was at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, opening for the Pickle Family Circus. I know we were the school extension, so we weren't actually in their show, but we did, little exhibitions here and there of the classic, have the cross line, and we take turns doing our tumbling passes, and we'd go discipline by discipline to show, the parents and everybody like what we've been up to. So we had those experiences. And then I would say at one point we did, like when I did the New Pickle Circus, that's when we started doing the acting stuff. So, me and my brother, we had some characters, we put makeup on. I think for me in the beginning, being on stage was such an adrenaline rush because it was live that I very much sort of related to it because of the same feelings I was getting when I would do a trick I was scared to do. So I really related to the performing aspect, and just sort of in my head, I just associated that as an extension of the same sort of adrenaline or moments before a trick.
Yeah.
The same, like right before I walked, out of the wings onto the stage and all eyes are on you. And now it's like you have to be and hold yourself a certain way, which was scary, as a kid to perform live. You prepare yourself only so much, but then once you're out there, there's no more coach, there's no more director, and you're in costume, like I said, with the makeup and everything. So I think that's sort of my first taste of like, okay, like being on stage. And we were lucky because, having that experience in the Pickle Circus, we were on stage a lot. And I remember I listened to the John Gilkey episode, and he was talking about being on stage a lot. And I think as kids, just having that experience of being on stage so much before, I guess, being considered professional circus artists, I was pretty comfortable by the time I got to ENC. By the time I was, 17, I'd been on stage so much so that I was like proud, like let's go, like let's get on stage and then do what we do and really take in that energy from the audience. And what is it like to get a standing ovation? I was well aware of it at that point. I was like, when you're a little kid and you're doing these tricks, audience gives you applause. You're like, oh, that's amazing. Like there's like these hundreds, 100 people, 200, 300, 400, 500 people like giving you applause and giving you energy, sort of signaling like, we like what you're doing. And when you're like, 7 years old, getting that sort of message, you learn quickly that like that feeds that sort of energy on stage. And so by the time I was 13, 14, and it turned into acting, and like I said, we had our little characters. But then I think the first experience with contemporary circus is when Gypsy, she came and decided that she wanted to do sort of an end of the school year show for us called Walk Don't Walk, where she's like, I'm going to give them contemporary circus. I'm going to give them a taste of it. And we're going to make a show that has their style in mind. So, for us, we were so happy because it was like no tights. And we're like, yes, yes, thank you. Oh my God, this is amazing. Like that was like like when she said that, we were like shocked that we were like, wait, we can be on stage without tights?
Yo,
And
I think you just like defined contemporary circus right there.
The
like
fact that
tights,
she like encouraged it. I know. And for us being like 17, we were like, oh my God, so we can invite our friends to this show. Like that was eye-opening for us.
That's hilarious.
And then on top of that, then she asked us to bring in our own music. And like I said, we are all big into skateboarding. So we were really influenced by that culture of like hip hop. And, at one point we were listening to like Photech and, some of these other things that were being put in skate videos. And San Francisco is a huge skateboarding city. And so we were so influenced by that culture that for us, it was like, to be given that freedom to wear looser clothing. And we had tank tops on, and we had this choreography where we didn't look at the audience, and we didn't style after a trick, where we were like, oh my God. And the audience was eating it up. And Gypsy really showed us like what it's like to capture an intention and communicate that to an audience that doesn't say necessarily, look at me, look at me, look at what I'm doing is so incredible, but focusing on what is the intention of this act, what is the intention of this show, what is the mood that you're trying to deliver to this audience. And that's what we're focusing on. That's what we're going to capture. That's what we're going to deliver in this performance, Walk, Don't Walk. And for us, like, we ate that up. To have our music blasting on stage, to have us doing these choreographies where we're doing these like walking patterns and tumbling patterns. And we had these suit jackets on at one point over top of our tank tops, and they're flying in the wind as we're jumping off these teeter boards. I mean, for us, it was like, okay, we can be cool on stage, and I hate to say cool, but as a 17-year-old, it's like, you're very much aware of what's cool and not cool.
Yeah, totally.
And you're very much striving to be cool. Like there is a huge part of being a teenager where it's like, you want to be cool for your friends, for your peer group, and at some point it's like, we realize like, okay, in circus, it's fun to do, but it's not cool. And that's okay. We loved it anyways. We kept going 5 days a week, but you wouldn't be catching me telling my skateboard friends to come at the Circus Center and watch me do this act in tights. Like, I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
But the love for the athleticism of it never wavered. And so that was like the weird thing of like sort of my experience with circus for my childhood, is just kind of finding like what I loved about it. And also realizing at one point, it was like, where am I going with this?
That's so interesting. Yeah, because I do feel like what Gypsy did and what the Fingers do or did, this is part of my question, was that they really like updated the art form in a way for North America specifically. And many others did it as well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to only put it on the Fingers.
No.
But I think that I would say, I mean, as an American, as a person from the US, like, I think for me, like, they were a company that showed me like, oh, right, this is like what contemporary circus is capable of, Yeah,
no, exactly. And like I said, I speak for myself specifically and my experience, but they were the sole reason for me considering circus a potential career.
Okay.
Just because I hadn't even seen them perform. Like, I don't think I ever saw the Fingers or Gypsy or Shayna perform before that Walk, Don't Walk experience. And I think that experience alone, because it celebrated me and my upbringing and what I thought was cool, and it celebrated what my friends thought were cool, and it celebrated that and put that in the limelight. I didn't know that was contemporary circus at all.
Yeah. Sure.
I just thought, here's a director who's telling me to bring in my own music and to wear what I think looks good. And now we're going to sort of shape that a little bit so that we all are wearing that, and that we're going to put that on stage. And I was like, amazing. Little did I know that is very much contemporary circus.
Yeah.
Right. It's taking unique perspective that's not the norm and sort of instilling that in an art form that, is very much rooted in tradition.
Yeah, I have to ask. I want to get to like your artistic direction and all of that kind of work. But I'm kind of curious, like, do you think that that's still, because what then happened, or what I see happen, is now contemporary circus is like whenever you just don't wear tights. Like, I actually think that that's a hilarious like definition of it. Because it's like now it's like, all right, they're wearing jeans, they're doing contemporary circus, Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, does the art form need another evolution? Like, what do you see, or how do you see it going now? And are the Fingers, or are you as a director thinking about that?
I mean, I think
that was just a really big question that took this interview like a totally different direction than like
no. It's a good question, because I mean, I myself, I'll speak from my perspective.
Yeah.
And what I feel personally is like, yes, you're right. I think to a certain extent, you start to see the contemporary circus, the one that's challenging tradition, become very trendy and become very sort of obvious, where it's like, okay, this is contemporary circus. They're wearing jeans, like you said. They have no shirt on. They're doing, the contemporary show, like that a lot of people, so it becomes repetitive for sure. Like I definitely see that. At the same time, I think the intention behind contemporary circus, that a lot of these artists, they're fully intending to do something different. It just so happens that they really love what they're seeing, I think. And they want to continue doing that. They want to, they see themselves. I mean, that was one thing that for me, I always wanted to identify, like, where do I see myself fitting in circus? Where do I see myself? Like when I look at performers on stage when I was a kid, I was like, which one do I want to be like? Which one do I see myself as? And so I really very much gravitated towards those performers where I was like, I like his style. I want to emulate that person. I want to emulate their, like, the way they do things. I remember, this is random, but when I was a kid, there was this one acrobat that Lu Yi brought from China. Xiao Hong was his name. And he, no, was it Xiao Hong? No, that was a different one. Sorry, Chu Ching Fa. Because Chu Ching Fa was the one that was on. Yeah. Okay. So Chu Ching Fa was on stage and he did hoop diving and pole, but he had this part in his hoop diving act where they'd bring out like this tray of like little teacups, and he would put like a cup, and he had all these cups, and he would do like a no hand dive roll through 3 hoops. And I remember you're like, oh my God, like he's going to drop all these cups, going to go shattering, whatever. And it's going to be like break all over the place. But I remember watching him, and he was like the coolest dude I'd ever seen. Of like the way he did the trick was like kept his calm, showed no fear. And it was just like you had no doubt he was going to just like bust this trick out. And like, sure enough, like he does it super smooth, puts the things to the side, and just like barely acknowledges the audience, and then just like keeps going. And I was like, that was so badass. And so there's like people like that where I was like, and there's another one that Mr. Lee brought, Huan Zhen, who is like this insane Chinese acrobat. And he did these tricks on pole where he did one called the tornado, which I think maybe he was like the first one to ever do. That's what Louis told us, that he like invented the trick for him, which is where you climb up the pole with your legs not touching, or your feet not touching the pole, and you climb up just with your hands.
Oh, and you kind of like go around like
circular motion. Yeah. And Huan Zhen was like the first one to ever do that, and also the best one to ever do it. And like the way he did it too was like, I remember watching him, and he'd come into the gym, no warm up, and just kind of like move around a little bit and then like do his thing. And so for us, we really had these sort of inspirations or role models from Chinese acrobats. And Chinese acrobats, we didn't know at the time, but they'd been training since like, 3 years old.
Yeah.
And they trained 12 hours a day, rain or shine. Mr. Lee told us so many stories. So for us, I think we really gravitated towards those kind of role models of like, we just do this. Like, it's like you go to battle, And so I think for contemporary circus today, you definitely see where I think the inspiration starts, and then the intention wants to sort of, well, this is my take on what I'm seeing, rather than I have a completely different perspective than what's out there. So I think it kind of like recycles itself over and over again. And so I feel like for me personally, what I see a lot of is sort of that recycling of contemporary circus, which is fine, which I mean, it makes sense to me why that's happening. But I think for contemporary circus for something to come out of left field, I think I agree with you to a certain extent. Like, yes, like I'm waiting for something to come out of left field, just like I experienced when I was a kid.
Yeah, sure.
And I haven't seen that in a bit.
Yeah.
Did that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I think, I mean, I guess my question, coming from that, or like my clarifying question maybe is like, as an artistic director at the Fingers, or assistant or associate. Yes. Got to get your title right. Got to get something right.
Yeah.
I guess my question is like the Fingers have now such a strong, like what was kind of this innovative thing is now like the brand and what's expected, and how much of your work is like to kind of embrace that and carry that forward, and how much of that is to like challenge it and open up new doors or figure out new ways of exploring.
Well, I mean, the one thing I have to say about like the creation process with the fingers is very much still what it was when I experienced Walk Don't Walk with Gypsy. It's that idea of, yeah, of course there's like the concept, and the directors come up with the concept, and they have this, this message they want to say. But every single one of their shows, I mean, I'm always so impressed with the way, and like I said, celebrate, and I'll say it again, the way they celebrate people. We hire an artist, we bring that artist in. Sure, what they do is cool. Sure, what they do is amazing. They have all this huge bag of tricks and this discipline that they're really good at. But who are they? What do they have to say? Flash forward, God, they've been around now for since 2000, 2002, 2001? I think 2001 maybe. I think it's so incredible that they're still able to have that sort of drive or motivation to know their artists and to ask them, like, what do you have to say? Like, what do you want to say? How do we say that then? How do we take what you want to say and blend it in with our concept and make sure that we are bringing the best part of you out, and also challenging you? Because, some artists, like we've had artists that sort of, because I said I do casting at the Fingers. So there's a lot of artists I talk to, and, they've asked me, they say, hey, like, I would love to work with the Fingers because I want them to break me. I want them to challenge me. I want them to get me outside of what I do and what I think circus is and how I've been approaching circus for X amount of time. And I think that's so awesome that, like, they feel safe with the Fingers to bring that out of them, that they're not being told what to do, but they're being asked how they want to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Which I think for me is like, that's one of the reasons I'm still with the Fingers to this day. I've been with them forever. And it's just because I love that process personally. Like, I think it's so safe and awesome, and it builds relationships and connections that for me has lasted years and years and years. And, I do casting for them, but, they allow me to cast the way I want to. So the way I cast, from what I've learned from other companies, it's different. But it's my way, and it's a way for me to build friendships and relationships with every artist that I cast, for the company.
Can you talk a little bit about that way that you cast? Just because I know a lot of listeners want to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
like, what do you do that's different than other companies?
Well, I think what the Fingers taught me in the beginning was it's not about the tricks. Right. A trick doesn't make an artist. Like, a lot of people can do a backflip. A lot of people can, do silks. A lot of people can do cerceau. And it's, like, what is their interpretation of what they do? What is how? So I think for me, because they taught me that so early on, is it's not necessarily what you do, but how you do it. I sort of took that into my being as a circus artist. And then when I started casting, it's like the first thing I do when I see somebody that is approaching, juggling or acrobatics or teeter or pole, and they're approaching it their way, I ask them questions. Hey, I love what you do. And I approach all of future artists as fans, because I am a fan.
That's so cool.
And so the first thing I say, I love what you do. I think it's amazing. I think it's so cool. Why'd you do that? Like, where'd you come up? Like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do outside of circus? And so I just want to find out a little bit about them, because what they do could be insane. It could be amazing, but that's not who they are. And so I really try to learn who they are. And I always, it's funny because sometimes the office will ask me, like, oh, I'm trying to get a hold of this artist. Like, how do you do it? And, give me 5 minutes. And it's like circus artists they don't do email. They do Facebook, Instagram.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I can get any response within, 5 minutes, just because, like, I know how they operate. I know people of them. And so I talk to them in safe spaces, and I don't, like, I really, as much as I can, I always approach artists as a fellow artist, because I am an artist, like, first, always. I'll always be an acrobat first. And so on paper, like, I'll take into account, like, on paper, their CV, look at their video. But for me, it really comes down to who they are as people and what they're going to bring into a room.
Yeah.
And for me, that's a really important part, because that's something that I learned myself, is that whatever you bring into that creation room, that's going to set the tone for everything, not only what's on stage, but like the communication with the other artists, the communication with the directors, the communication with the office, how you tour. And for me, it's really important that the people I put and the people that we choose, me along with the fingers, because it's a communication. I don't make any final decisions unless it's communicated with the fingers and with the artistic directors. And we talk about it, that the people we try to put in the room bring energy and positivity and ideas and motivation, because at the end of the day, I'm looking for a process that's going to be just as memorable as what's on stage. If that makes sense.
That's
like
so
the process is very important.
Yeah.
Because a bad process can ruin an amazing show. Mm-hmm. Right? But an amazing process will stay amazing forever. Even if the show turns out bad, hey, we can't all make a groundbreaking 5-star show. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's how it works. But if the process was solid and the process was amazing, the process was, healthy and, came up with all these cool ideas, cool, awesome. That memory will stay with you forever. And then then that sort of motivates you to keep working with those people over and over again,
That's super cool. And it's like what you were saying. No, that makes total sense. And it's like, okay. And what you're doing is you're building healthy artists who are able to then like explore further and, maybe be a part of a 5-star show one day or something like that, like.
Yeah, that's it.
I think that's, yeah.
I mean, I think what's really cool too is like, I'm also a huge sort of, I really like, I don't know if you saw in my bio, but like I also went to school for education at Concordia. So like one of the things that I really gravitate towards is giving people sort of life skills or like heightening those skills. And so I think, sometimes when we take students from ENC, fresh out of ENC, to give them a healthy process and to show them how to create and how to, whether or not the outcome is amazing, whether or not the product is groundbreaking, but if we can give them those skills and show them how to create and how to challenge themselves physically and theatrically and all these things, well, then they get to take those skills forever.
It's so cool.
And that's awesome. That's awesome for all of those artists that sort of go through that experience, because it motivates them to make their own 7 fingers and their own companies and their own become themselves and figure out who they are as artists. And so I think the fact that the fingers sort of celebrate that and continue to do that to this day, it only heightened my sort of like awareness of how important that part is, because that's what happened to me when I was 18.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of motivated me to sort of figure out like, what do I like about circus? What I don't like about circus, that's why I used like the tights.
I was going to say,
that was a huge part of it. I don't like the tights, which is superficial, but at the same time to recognize that and to be comfortable in your skin as an artist is so important. Yeah. And then you build on that. And then if I do decide to wear tights, it's an artistic choice. Right?
It's really saying, oh man, Cisco wants to suffer today.
That's it.
So
I want to make a commentary.
Yeah, right. So you do casting. You're integral to the process of kind of like show formation, could I say?
Sure.
What else does it mean to be an associate artistic director at the 7 Fingers? You mentioned like some video editing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I did. I mean, that was random. So about, I want to say, was it 5 years ago, I guess? My little brother, Dom, he did Dominic Cruz. He's actually, he's one of the members of and founders of Back Pocket. I don't know if you know Back Pocket.
Yeah.
I'm pretty stoked for him. So he
They'll be on the show eventually. We're trying to, it takes a minute to get everybody.
All right, I'll put in a word.
Yeah, thank you.
No, so he was graduating from ENC. Part of graduating from there is you have to make a video, sort of a promo video, which funny enough, when I graduated from there, I mean, we can get to that later, but we sort of had some issues when we graduated from ENC.
Wait, why? No, I want to get to it now. What did you want to do?
Well, so you have to make these promo packages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you graduate from ENC. I don't know if it's exactly the same now, but when we did it, So I think it was in our second year of school, me, Raph, Brad, and Will, and Will's hand-to-hand partner, Eloise, we decided we wanted to be a group. We're like, we're going to be a group, and we went on a unofficial street performing tour in Europe between our second and third years to see like, will this work? And we had a blast. Like, it was so much fun. And I do want to talk about that at one point. But so when we graduated, because of that experience street performing, we were like, okay, we're a group, which means we're going to graduate as a group. And ENC was like, no, you're not. Like, you don't get to graduate as a group. Like, you have to graduate as your individual disciplines. And we said, too late. We made a promo video with all of us. Like, we made a 5-person promo video, and we made like a 20-minute long sort of, we called ourselves, what do we call ourselves? At first, we called ourselves the Abandoned Acrobats when we did the street performing tour, and we made like a little 3-minute video. And then when we were graduating, we decided to up it. We called ourselves the Urban Acrobats, which was very much more, even more of that skate culture. So we wore like baggy jeans. Like, we got really far away from everything. That was hilarious. I think there's a link on YouTube somewhere. And we did like a 20-minute long video with skits and circus all throughout Montreal.
If you send it to me, I'll put it in the show notes for sure. That's
oh hilarious. My God. That was so funny. And we went all over Montreal. We said, we want to make a skate video for circus. Like, that's what we want to do. And we made that. And we were in the meeting with ENC, and we're like, there, this is what we did. This is our final thing. And they were like, they were not happy with it, but they didn't have a choice. They're like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. Like, you want to graduate as a group, whatever. Go ahead. And they basically kind of, I don't want to get it wrong. I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was sort of along the lines like, you want to graduate as a group? Good luck finding work as a group. Like, good luck. Like, yeah, good. Like, yeah, you guys are going to get hired as a group. Sure. And so that's what we did, though. We made that video, and we really like, this is what we stand by. Like, this is circus for us. This is our.
That's awesome. I have to interject, just like personally, I think that's so awesome, because one of the things that I mourn about ENC is that they don't take artists and like make a Bonkin troupe, or they don't like make like, a Korean, like, what would happen if they actually like took a bunch of artists and were like, we're going to make the dopest Korean swing troupe you've ever seen. Form. We really got that from Lu Yi, because Lu Yi had this really strong thing of like, so when he taught us hoop diving, for example, we weren't allowed to learn each other's tricks because he said, if you learn each other's tricks, then you don't need each other to be a group. And he said, each one of you is going to have your specialty. So like I said, like, I wasn't allowed to do handstands. Because I guess my elbows don't let me. Yeah. But like on pole, like I did dolphin on pole, whereas Will did legs catch, and then Brad would do shoulder catch. And those were the tricks we did. And I didn't learn shoulder catch, just like Brad didn't learn dolphin, just like neither one of us did legs catch. In hoop diving, like I did the layout through 4 hoops. The other one did, back handspring through 4 hoops. The other one did front tuck through 3 hoops. And so he was very adamant. And I'm assuming that comes just from the way like circus is done in China, whereas everybody sort of has their one thing that they do in circus, and then you do that forever. But he, the more the years went on, and the more we pressed him about that, he really said it's because that's how a group works. You each have your moment to shine, and you each, get to take the focus, and then you get to throw each other focus on those specialty tricks that you each have as individuals to form a group. And so I think we kind of took that on forever, that sort of mindset of like, we each have our sort of own special power, I guess. Like, superpower, you know what I mean? How like superheroes have their own little thing, right? But you all like different
so
things.
It's like yeah, exactly. I do the no hands. Okay, he does this. So it's like,
it sounds like it worked, because you guys really like stuck together for a while. And
well, I think we just got along on so many different fronts. Like I think we grew up together, and we just like, I remember going to San Francisco all the time, me and Raph, and we'd like spend the night at Brad's house, Will's house. They'd come to our house, and we sort of grew up together. And like I said, because we all played basketball and skateboarding and did circus, we just liked hanging out together regardless of what we were doing. So I think that really formed, they speak about that sort of, when you're on stage, the communication with people, with your, the other artists on stage. And for us, the communication on stage was like second, it was so easy for us because we just knew each other in and out, growing up with people like that, that love all the same things you do. By the time you get on stage, you're so comfortable with those people that like communication was nothing. It was like, cool. Like there was no stepping on each other's toes. We were just hyped to be performing together because we liked hanging out together, and then flash forward to getting to tour together. Well, now we're being, this is even better.
No, it's
like,
the same, but you're getting paid.
Well, we're getting paid, going on tours, doing that. And I think I think for Lu Yi, he couldn't have been more proud to have formed a group that was able to just, take what he gave us and then just keep going with it and keep pushing together as a group. And then also forming our own group, without necessarily Lu Yi right next to us to tell us to do that. We just did it again at ENC. And we were so convinced when we graduated from there that we're like, this is going to work. Like, why wouldn't it work? It's worked so far. So we're going to just keep doing this because I would rather fail as a group than venture out individually. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because we just wanted to be with each other. And so when we graduated, like I said, like we put out that video, and we actually, I remember Gypsy years later telling us, and Shayna just being like, that video was the start of Traces. Seeing what you guys were doing and seeing that sort of camaraderie and seeing, what you were bringing to circus and your perspective on circus, like that is Traces. That was your upbringing in a video form because that's what you guys were interested in. It had nothing to do with what's trend, like we talked about earlier, what's trendy in contemporary circus today. It had nothing to do with that. It was like, this is what we like.
Yeah, totally.
And so that was really cool. Like that was really awesome that we could sort of, years later have that affirmation that, as a group, you guys that was cool. That was amazing what you guys did and the perspective you took on and the ability to sort of take what you like and communicate that to an audience and to a public through the video that we made, the urban acrobats.
The urban acrobats, UA.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, and what I
haven't thought about that for years. Sorry.
No, I love it. I love that kind of stuff also in the podcast. It's kind of like what it brings up, that asking people to recollect their old memories. It's nice. Yeah. Yeah.
And you asked me about video, I think, no?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think I jumped around.
You did, but I'm here for it.
Okay. Yeah, because you asked me about the
well, I asked you about like, okay, so when you're like, because I guess my interest or like my secret reason for asking it was I'm interested in like how the fingers run, like administratively, but like because there's so much more creativity and that's required from a company like the Fingers. That's not just like what they put out on stage. It's like their promo material. It's like when I was just there yesterday training, and it's like when you walk in, you see that like video that's at the front desk, like there's so much on the website, who you follow on Instagram, this kind of stuff. By the way, thanks for the follow yesterday. Appreciate it. But yeah, like, but like, so are you kind of directing some of that stuff too? How much of that, like,
I run the Instagram at the moment, to be honest.
Oh, work. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. So actually, one of the things, that's a huge part of the reason I'm there is because not only did they celebrate me as an artist when I was an artist, and then when I stopped being an artist, I wasn't sure where like I said, I think so much for my career and for me personally was always me trying to figure out who I am in circus and what does circus mean to me, and identifying, why I love circus or why I don't love circus, and just trying to stay very much aligned with putting myself in positions to continue to love circus. for as long as possible. Because like I said, at the base of it, I am a huge fan of circus forever.
Yeah.
But it can be a job, and it can be really difficult sometimes, which I went through, numerous times of, I don't like this, I don't want to be here. And how do I deal with that? But when I made the transition to behind the scenes, I mean, it was so cool. It was like super awesome that, once I stopped performing, I became a bartender at one point, which was like the best job ever. I had so
Nice.
much fun. And it was so
Nice.
funny because I was like laughing to
Dude,
myself,
you'd
like,
be such a good bartender. I can
yo, but
totally
I
see
felt,
it.
I was like, I'm 26. Was I 26?
Yes.
Maybe 26, 27. I was like, this is the best. This is so fun. And I just like come to work. It was like, and I was laughing because it was like my first job outside of circus. And like people around me are like tripping because I'd like show up on a Friday night, like, all right, like, let's get the drinks going. Like, let's go. Like, I'm ready. But nothing. I could be in, the craziest show on opening night in like an insane theater. The stress of like a Friday or Saturday night when you're in the juice trying to make like 30 drinks at the same time with like multiple waiters and waitresses coming at you, that kind of stress I had never experienced. That was insane. That was crazy. Anyways, so that taught me, a whole different side of life, I guess. And then I also started going to school as an independent student at Concordia, just because I really needed to leave the stage and leave circus
Mm.
to figure out what was it about circus that I loved. Because at that point I
Mm.
had fallen out of love with circus. Um, and so when I transitioned behind the scenes, the fingers always sort of stayed in contact with me. And at one point, I remember they contacted me and they said like, "Oh, we remember that you were interested in being a teacher, and there's this random gig in Rotterdam at Code Arts, which is a Circus University in Rotterdam, that they have like a super established like dance and music school, and they had just started a circus part of it. And so the fingers were like, yeah, if you're interested, like we'll send you, like you can go do it. And so like that was one of the things, like I was like, cool, like I'll go do that. And so I taught there for a year with my wife, and that was super fun. And then the fingers sort of, they wanted to hire me back, or not even hire me back, but I think Gypsy just threw it out there because I had never, like, we always stay in contact, and just like we want to hire you, like we just want you behind the scenes here, like your energy and whatever. And I remember asking her like, well, what do you want me to do? And she was like, I don't know. We just want you, like, we want you here, like behind the scenes with us,
Yeah,
like on
cool.
our side. And I was like, all right, like, let's see, let me think about it. And so at that point, me and my wife had been in negotiations with Code Arts to continue, because we were sort of on track to become directors of that school. And we were like, that would be sweet. That'd be amazing. But part of the policy there is they didn't have anybody on tenure. So it was like, you could only work part-time in the school. And since we
Mm.
weren't Dutch, we were like, we didn't want to have to look for work outside of that
Mm.
and work part-time and try to find part-time work. So we're like, okay, that's not going to work. Even though we had like an amazing time there and we love that school to death. I mean, still to this day, that school is so amazing. But yeah, so Gypsy was just like, come back here. So at that point in our lives, we're like, yeah. And my wife, like her sister, moved to Montreal. We're like, okay, like, sure. And then I remember telling Gypsy, I was like, you don't know what you want me to do there? Okay. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, what if I get stuck doing something I really hate? Because like I said, I had just stopped performing because, mentally, it wasn't doing it for me anymore. And it was really difficult to like navigate through that. So I told Gyps, I was like, I'll sign right now if you let me go to school. And she was like, okay, you can go to school, no questions asked. And I said, I want to go to school physically. Like I want to go to classes and be able to have that experience. I mean, that also came from being homeschooled, right? That I had like a fascination with education and what that means to be in a classroom and what that
Yeah,
means
sure.
to, that was one of the reasons, like after doing the code arts and teaching for a year, I realized like teaching's amazing. But I want to teach circus. I want to teach something else. I want to teach about the solar system, so I became like, I went to school to become an early elementary teacher. So I could like do all the subjects and really do that. So the fingers, when they hired me based on that and said, we just want you there, I was like, that's a crazy extension of just like, we trust that it'll work itself out, And so that was one of the biggest reasons where I was like, okay, this company's going to do me right. Like this company's always done me right in terms of performing. And now they're about to hire me as behind the scenes to offer what I offer, you know? And so when I came back and I started working, it was sort of like we developed my position, and my position
Wait,
turned.
but did you ever become a teacher? Like, did you ever teach the solar system to like kids? Like, what
Well, so
happened?
I did my schooling, and I was like, I think in total, man, it was a lot of credits because I was also, you know, I'm not Canadian. So I think it was like 120 credits, 130 credits. Like it was massive.
Okay.
And I wasn't able to do like my 5 classes every year. So I did like 6 years of schooling. So I did my internship. So yes, I did get to teach because they have 6 months of internships at Concordia for the early elementary program. And so I did 6 months of internships, but you know, 6 years later, my job at the Fingers turned into my dream job. And so I was like, you know what, teaching's amazing. And I loved it. And it was super fun and so rewarding teaching, you know, little kids and just giving them that spark and watching that spark happen. But it's hard. It's hard because my dream job right now at Sim Fingers is like I pinch myself every day that I get to do what I do. Like I can't, yeah. So I think teaching will be there forever, and
For sure.
and I'll always love it. But no, I have not done professionally. I've done the internships.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to ask.
No, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Fingers. So I started out sort of just being there with the artistic directors, and just jumping on every project and sort of putting myself where I was most needed. So a lot of it in the beginning was coaching, and then that sort of developed into not only coaching, but also like doing choreographies, taking little groups and developing sequences, making acts, things like that. And then that developed into the casting part because they saw how social I was with the artists. And they saw like, because I was, you know, I had this like motivation to become a teacher. They saw like everything I was learning at Concordia, I was bringing into the creation room. So a lot of it was about motivation. A lot of it was about team building. A lot of it was about creating safe spaces. So they were like super hyped on that. And so that, like I said, it developed into casting. And so then I started directing the casting and all these roles. I mean, even with the video stuff, like I said, I mean, we got way sidetracked, but when Dominic, my little brother, when he graduated, he asked me to make a video for him. I made a video for him just on a little GoPro. But because of all my skateboarding, like I really gravitate towards skate videos. And so I made it sort of like a skate video. And the Fingers basically just walked into my office after my little brother released that video. And they're like, do that for us. Like, do you like doing that?
Nice.
Do that for us. And so I think for everything at the Fingers, the reason like my position right now is like why I say it's my dream job is because they constantly ask me, do you like what you do here? And I say, you know, either yes or no. And they're like, okay, well, whatever you do here, like, let's make it the best of who you are. And so if you like doing videography and you want to be a filmmaker, we're going to support that. And we're going to allow you to figure out how to become a filmmaker in circus. If that's true, like if that's what you want to do, keep doing it. You know, nobody came and said, you have to do this video. You have to. No, they said, do you like doing that? Do that for us, please. Like, let's go. And so it's same with casting. It was like, you know, I remember having meetings with them and saying like, this is how I think casting would go. And we trust you. Like, you got it. Sure.
Dude,
like,
you have like the best life ever.
So I was like,
that's amazing.
That's amazing that they trust that process and they trust my process and they trust me as a person to make decisions that, you know, are not only good for myself and good for, you know, the people around me, but like good for the company, the Seven Fingers. You know, the Seven Fingers is a huge company, and for them to trust that process, I was like, damn, this is, like I said, dream job, right?
I think it's also really amazing that you recognize like how rare and special that is.
Oh, like I said, I'm so
like
thankful every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, awesome. I mean, and that's one thing I try to tell like upcoming artists. It's like, if there's anything I've taken away, it's like to make circus what works for you, that exists. You know, you want to travel in caravans, that exists. You want to work with, you know, whatever, however you want to do just corpos for us, that exists.
Absolutely.
Like circus is able, like you can mold circus today, which is crazy to me. I mean, with the pandemic, it's a little bit hard. I mean, it's everything's changed, but you know, I fully believe that like, and I was a product of that. Like I felt stuck at one point in circus. So I left.
Yeah.
But today I can fully stand behind like circus today for me right now. It's exactly what I want it to be for me, which isn't for everybody,
Yeah.
but I like fully support, like go after what you think circus should be for you,
Dude, that's so good. I want to start wrapping up, but I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
I know we didn't talk about traces.
We didn't talk about anything. Yeah. Okay. Let's. All right. Maybe I make this like a.
Hold up. I need to plug my computer in.
All right. Let's take a. I need to drink some water. So that was the end of the real part one of my interview with Francisco Cruz. Now you can go back and listen to fake part one if you want, and that will kind of continue after we took a break. We came back and talked for another hour. Something we didn't get to in the interview for various reasons that I want to allude to, and I will be creating a special episode about just because of the file length of these episodes and the budget that we have, is Francisco's brother Rafael Cruz, who these 2 episodes are dedicated to. He passed. And Francisco and I agreed that it was important to take some time to really reflect on Raf's life, how it affected Francisco and how it impacted the entire circus community. So that will be a special episode coming out hopefully later this week. I haven't even asked Allison about it yet, but I'm sure she'll be down with it. And so, yeah, look for that coming out. These 2 episodes are totally dedicated and in honor of Raf Cruz and his life and his contributions. So thank you to both Francisco, who is here in his earthly body today, for giving the interview. And thank you to Raf Cruz for influencing so much this interview. If you want to check out Francisco's work, Filmed by Francisco is his Instagram handle, and 7 Fingers is the company that he is representing so well with so many great films and other artistic directorial projects. For aerial training tips and inspiration, you can follow me. I'm at _artist_athlete. My Facebook page is The Artist Athlete. My website is www.theartistathlete.com. I'm on TikTok, The Artist Athlete. One of my summer goals is to amp up my TikTok. And what else? Oh yeah, patreon.com/theartistathlete, the place to go to support this podcast. Please do. It means so much to me, to Allison, to the rest of the team. Thanks for listening, friends, fans, and foes. I'll talk at you next week. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo. Thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Hi, I'm Freya. You can hear my whole story in episode 50 of the Artist Athlete podcast, but I'm here to tell you about something else that I do. I'm a qualified health and nutrition coach. I help people with sleep and body confidence, among other things. You can see everything I have to offer at wildguidance.com or follow me on Instagram at wildguidance.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Aloha! My name is Beth Russell and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and slings and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.